Hello, everyone, and welcome to today's Amped podcast episode. Today, we're going to be taking a look at how new features are developed. I'm Sam Abbot, and I'm joined today with two of my esteemed colleagues.
I am Polito. I'm a forensic video analyst here at Abbot Software. Great to be here with everyone.
Hi there, great to be here. I'm Andrea Frisina. I'm a technical support specialist and trainer at Abbot.
I'm a video forensic analyst and a software tester. Here at Amped, we're very fortunate that we have a very close connection with our users. Whenever we are developing our software or thinking of new features to go into the software, normally those ideas stem from our users. And this is what we want to focus on this topic today, to give you guys an insight of how your feedback influences the development of our software. So I wanted to start off with where the user's ideas first appear. And I'll pass over to one of our colleagues who's going to go through that and where that first idea comes from for a new feature.
Well, I can start saying to you, Sam, that I'm in a very privileged position that I am a user myself, mainly of AMP5, but obviously through the years I've had a good go at AMP Replay, AMP Authenticate, and AMP DVRConv, which are other products. And so I am in this privileged position that when I do casework, something might pop up in my head, and makes me think, if only we would have this feature, how beneficial it would be for other users. And so, when that happens, I'm usually straight onto our internal channel, discuss that with our hybrids team, which are basically a team of forensic experts who kind of like are a bit of a bridge between our developers and our commercial people, and then the conversation starts. I can give you a few examples. One that I really can recall was when I was doing a kind of like a timeline with AMP5, which basically is a compilation of different clips that we want to put together to show the trier of fact or the jury or the judge the sequence of events that happens within different cameras or different sources. And for example, in AMP5, this requires a combination of different chains, and also the use of a selector filter that you can top and tail these clips. So of course it can be done, but I thought, wouldn't it be cool if we can, for example, have like a keyboard shortcuts to top and tail our clips? So to resemble it a little bit more like a video editor.
Right.
So that's just one example. I'm sure we'll have many more. In my case, it's just I'm usually like maybe Andrea here will talk a little bit more about how users ask us, but usually it's myself who come up with some ideas that we discuss with others.
And just to go over that point, I think it's a very unique aspect that we have at Amped, and a very fortunate one, like you said, is that a lot of the people employed within Amped are still expert users of the software. So we have that direct link of what casework needs, and we're continuing to follow the development of this industry and what's needed in the courtrooms.
I totally agree with you 100%. I mean, I think it's so important that in our company we have a group of people who are not only users themselves, but it can also relate to our users' needs.
Exactly.
Because we understand exactly where they come from.
Yeah, I definitely agree with that. I come from a different perspective because, as you know, I'm not a user myself. I don't do cases with our products. Nevertheless, I use the products a lot, and I see how users use them. And so many of the features actually come from an original idea or input from actual end users or trainees who might suggest something during the training or through our support channels. And also myself, while using the product for when I do tech support, for example, or also when I teach, when I explain in training, I might come up with some specific needs that then are translated, let's say, and input into our internal channels to our devs. And so we come up either with little ideas for specific tools or maybe with larger ideas on how to improve workflows that might imply the addition of several little tools or filters into our products. So it's nice that we have a variety, let's say, of users inside the companies, and most of the users come from different backgrounds. Some of them are beginners, some of them are very advanced users, and you get different kind of input for both. And they're different, but they're not better or worse. Beginner users are just as likely to come up with very interesting suggestions as experienced user, in my opinion.
Definitely. I think that's a really good point as well. When you've been using the product for such a long time, I think the creativity of new ideas sort of falls off. And when you get new pairs of eyes looking at the software, that's when you get quite a lot of good ideas coming from it.
Yeah. Definitely. Some of the most, I think, ingenious and original ideas actually came from what we would call newbies, people who were just starting out with the product, with Five or Authenticate, maybe on their first training, and those people maybe used to use different products, so they had a completely different perspective that the one we had.
Yeah, and so we've looked at sort of from an ex-user and an expert sort of use case, coming up with ideas, and also from the training. But we've also got different mediums that people can give us ideas, and I want to just get that out there to users that might not be aware that they can contact us very easily. So we do have other channels, which I think we can quickly mention now, just so that they have that information. So if they do have an idea that they want to get into the software, they know it's very easy to contact us.
Absolutely. I mean, I think we're in a very privileged position at Software because we're an independent company, and we have a direct line of communication with our users. And as you mentioned, we have several channels our users can get in touch with us. Of course, face-to-face interaction is always great, and we're always, me and you, Andrea, you sometimes, Sam, here in the UK, we go out and see our users at conferences, trade shows, and that's actually a very good source of ideas from our users. It gives us an opportunity to catch up. But also we have a variety of different social media platforms, right? I find Discord to be a really good source of information. So we have a Discord channel which is open only to our users and staff, and through our various channels we actually have one channel within the old Discord platform where users can go and ask us for new features. And I really like at Christmas time we have one particular user who always say, Christmas is coming, I'd like Santa to bring me a present. Sure. Can we have presets in Five? Can we have concatenation? Can we have whatever, and then that then gives us the opportunity to sit down and then see maybe if our other users who have come up with the same idea, and then start saying to ourselves, well, this is the opportunity where we can develop this. Yeah. Other channels, of course, we have other social media platforms, LinkedIn, YouTube, but those are more for, I would say, ingesting content such as tutorials or educational material. But I think definitely the Discord channel is a good informal way to ask us about features. But of course, Fritz here, you may elaborate on this a little bit more. We have our formal support channel where we, we'll get more formal requests.
I'll definitely add a couple of things. I would say that it's almost impossible not to reach out to us. We are very easy to reach out. Amy mentioned already the support channel. That's our main official channel when it comes to support requests. And with that expression support request, I mean pretty much anything related to the products. So the typical approach that we have is users just need to drop an email. We'll evaluate, we'll reply, we'll evaluate, and we really are open to any kind of request. It could be a bug, it could be a feature request, it could be just a question. We reply to general questions, possibly not even strictly related to the products, but maybe general questions that pertain to the type of work that we do. Yeah. And that's definitely a major channel of communication. I would add to that, of course, training. Training is a huge input for us. Yeah, so absolutely. It's a moment in which we teach to trainees, but it's also a moment in which we learn a lot from trainees. Yeah. We have training sessions with private classes in which we are really are able to see how a specific agency work, their actual specific workflows. or we do trainings with open classes. And in that situation, we are able to see how different officers from all over the world work, and they have different strategies. So we learn a lot from that as well.
Perfect. So going from that then, so we get all these ideas from our users from different areas, and there is a lot. And we then get to that stage of the discussion within the company. And I think one of the important first stages that we take, which I want our users to know about, is how we differentiate a isolated issue that a single user is having and the trends of the market or what multiple people are expressing. So what do you think is sort of the way we do that, if we want to explain that to the users, how that happens? Before we do that, I just want to say as well, even if it is an isolated issue, nearly every single individual comment gets recorded in our internal database.
Sure. Sam, I was just going to get onto the point that you said. We all work in different departments, and we have a different way of getting feedback from our users. So we need a central point where we can collect this information. So at Amt, we use an internal ticketing system, which is based on the GitHub platform, where we can record things like interaction with our users, or in this case, feature requests from our users. And that way, we record the data, but also, our product management team and our development team can have a look at the content. Now, if there are, I must say, to the point that you made about isolated feature request, there may actually be one single feature request that came up from one user that I might actually sit down and thinking, that's a pretty cool idea. Why didn't we think of that? But of course, if we have a feature request that it gets asked repeatedly, then that will get noticed at some point, because we have a central point to collect the information, and then we can see exactly how many users are asking for something. For example, the writing queue, which is a very cool feature that we introduced recently in AMP5, that gives the ability to batch write videos. That will save people a lot of time when they have a lot of chains to output to video. Well, that was asked millions of times, may I say. Of course, our users also need to understand that certain feature requests, although they're very valuable, they may take a long time to develop. And this is not because we got a slow development team, but because there are certain things that we need to look at the core of our code in order before we even start implementing that feature.
Definitely. And part of it as well is that we have a huge backlog because we do take into consideration everything. I think on GitHub at the moment we've got around 7,000 open tickets.
Yeah.
Which I think that's why it's important to get that trend so that we can then begin to prioritize.
Sure. I mean, I think that's not it's not an unusual situation for a software company to have such a backlog, But yeah, you're right. We need some sort of prioritization. Now, another thing that I like our users to know is that we get together quite often, once a week, every Monday afternoon. We call it the hybrids meeting, where we are. The reason why we call the hybrids is because we kind of like intermediate between people with feelings, so that they take care of marketing, sales, and commercial aspects of the company, and we call them the humans, and people with no feelings, but with with a lot of coding in their heads, and those are our developers. We get together every Monday afternoon and discuss a lot of things, among which obviously features requests from ourselves and from our users.
Sure, and I would say that meeting is, I would say, I work in other companies, and that meeting, that hybrids meeting that you mentioned, is really a peculiar kind of meeting. I would call it like an arguing session, because mostly we do argue on those topics specifically, because as you said, Sam, we gather input from all these channels, and we have thousands of requests, and some of them might be very reasonable requests. Others we do not agree with for several reasons, and quite often we don't agree with each other. And that's deciding what to implement and what not requires quite a long discussion, I would say. And regarding trends, we definitely have, I would say, a wide variety of semi-random requests. And those are fairly easy to, I would say, to approve or not approve. But when it comes to trends, it becomes a little bit tricky. First of all, because you have to wait quite a bit. You have to wait at least months in order to understand where this train is going. And then you have to do a lot of these discussions during this hybrids meeting that Amy mentioned in order to understand if this trend is really something that we want to go along, that we want to follow. And usually, if we are dealing with a trend of request, the solution will not be maybe just a simple little implementation of a new feature, of a new little feature, but it will be something likely slightly larger, maybe maybe more than one feature that work together. So it's really a nice moment that Monday afternoon to discuss and brainstorm. It's a beautiful moment, I think, in a company.
Yes, definitely. And I think building off something you just said there, is when we get that first idea from the user, it's very easy for a user to ask for the world. And then while we're discussing that idea, we need to then figure out the balance between how powerful it's going to be, how simple it's going to be for the developers to create, and how intuitive it's going to be for the user then to use it. So I'd like to get some insights from you guys on how we balance that and how we drill down that initial huge idea into something that the user's going to benefit from at the end.
Yeah, so I totally agree with you. We need to get the balance right. Also, what I think we should add as well is that we deal with users that work in forensics. So we need to make sure that not only our features are powerful, intuitive, and all those things that you mentioned, but they are forensically sound.
100%.
Yeah, so ARM software, that's one of our other priorities out there. And that's perhaps why we have a group of people like ourselves and others like us who are users, and our boss calls us ex-coppers. Although I myself have never been a police officer, but I worked in law enforcement. And you, Sam, I think has worked in the military. Because it's important that we think about the features or development of features that could potentially create problems in the forensic soundness of a feature. I'll give you an example. I remember when we were talking about giving the ability to user to extract a timestamp when converting videos in DVRConv. Now, of course, we can do this in 5. Because 5 is got its own reproduction playback system, which can control things like a frame rate and playback speed based on the timestamps that we extract from the files. But with DVRConv, some users have asked us, well, we want to be able to convert videos and then play them in an outside player like VLC, but also have the timestamp available. But of course, because we couldn't control the playback of that video outside of our products, then we found that if we extract the timestamps, we just couldn't control the synchronization of that timestamp with the video. So although it was a very exciting feature, it was very powerful, it was very requested, in that instance we decided to put a hold on it because we were concerned about the safety for our users.
Yeah, I would say most of these discussions come down to constraints. We have to evaluate constraints and what is the benefit versus cost ratio of implementing something. And besides the usual constraints that all software companies have, like as you mentioned, speed, for example, you mentioned ease of use of a tool, which is extremely important because when you come up with the ideas, with your idea, you might create a wonderful tool which is very complex to use, and you don't really realize that it's so complex because you made it, you created it, but a new user would find it very difficult to use. On top of those, we have the forensic soundness, which is a constraint that other software companies that do general purpose products don't have. Yeah. So that's a very important thing for us. So we might say no to users. We do say no to users if that's the appropriate thing to do. The one thing we make sure of is that we explain why we decided to not accept, to do not go ahead with that feature request. And I think that's an important moment for us, because support in that case explains to these users why we decided to do that, and there is an educational moment, I would say, because we explain the reason, and in doing that we make the user who requested that aware of the issues with that request. Exactly, so it's an educational moment, I would say.
Yeah, I think as well, when we are accepting a new feature and we've decided, this is a great idea, internally then we go to the developers and we see if they have any constraints on their end, because there's the development side.
And they do most of the time.
Most of the time. And then I think our biggest downfall is that we don't speak robot, and so we often give them a spec to create, and they'll create it to the T, but things that we thought would be obvious as a user, we didn't tell them. And so we have that stage then, which would then come to me where it comes to the testing. I think a lot of the getting it to be intuitive to use for our users comes from that testing stage, which is I think a really good part of the growth of a new feature.
I absolutely agree. I just want to mention a few things about this actually, and then maybe ask you, Sam, as a tester, how that stage progresses, the testing stage. But in regards to that first initial planning, where obviously we have to get the development team involved at some stage, I really like the fact that for major features we have a dedicated, we call it a focused meeting, where we get together with the main developer that is going to be assigned for that feature. So at this stage, the feature request has been accepted, has been approved. We realize that yes, it's in the interest of our users, as in our interest to start developing the feature. And therefore, a developer, one or two, depending how big the feature is going to be assigned to that project. And then we have a focus meeting, which I think, I hope you guys agree with me, I think it really helped to understand, that some things that we may ask may be complicated from a development point of view, and that's the opportunity to then say, okay, well, if this is going to take us too long to do, then maybe we can do this instead. Okay, for our users it won't make much difference, but from a development point of view it will be much more applicable thing to do. And we've done this, for example, with a new assisted reduction function in replay, and it was such a massive project, and we obviously had a focus meeting where we discussed with the main developers. And actually this project was really interesting from a company point of view, because we had an integration team that took care of integrating the model into the software, and also we had an AI team which basically was looking at the training side of the assistant reduction. So that takes place. And also I like to say how I personally deal. I don't do that so much now anymore, mainly because I'm currently focused on other areas. But when we have a feature and we've kind of like decided all the main points of it, I start actually looking at how that's gonna look. And I use Photoshop for that. And please don't tell Spready that I use Photoshop, otherwise it will kill me. All right, but just to to kind of like be able to add buttons and where they are in the interface, so that that the developers can have a look and start to they have a reference point to go with. Certainly in terms of the graphical user interface. Of course, this would first have to be approved by everybody else, and certainly for major features like this one, assisted reduction, is more like a group decision. But that's how I like to approach that. But then, of course, then after that start the testing stage. And I don't know, Sam, if you want to explain a little bit how that works, because I understand there are different tiers of testing and like that.
Yeah, sure. So within the company, we've got three stages of testing. First, you've got the developers doing their own tests as they're creating that feature. And then it'll get passed to our level 1 testers, who are part of my colleagues in my team.
And what's level 1, sorry? What
level
does
1
that entail?
Level 1 testing is that first initial sort of making sure if you press a button, it does what it's supposed to do. So you're sort of doing the buttonology of the feature, making sure everything's working as it should, but you're not really looking at it from a forensic point of view at this point, and you're not looking at it as a workflow point of view. That's when we would go to the
You're just
2.
making sure that that feature alone is working as intended, basically.
Exactly.
Right.
Yeah.
Right.
And then after that testing's complete, then it would go to the level 2 testing. And this is when you start really looking at it as a workflow.
And this is the area you're most involved with.
Yes. So this is what I would do most of my day, every day, every year.
You love it, right?
I love it. I absolutely love it. It's my chance to break stuff. Okay, it's only in the software, but I like to try break stuff.
I'm sorry to interrupt you at this stage, and then you're going to resume. But I think our viewers need to know that if there is one person who can manage to break the software, that's Sam. He's got that reputation, right? Which I think that's the reason why he makes him the perfect candidate for that job.
Yeah. Just don't let him taste your car.
Yeah.
I think it's. I think you have to be a special type of person to be good at testing.
No, totally.
But not in a good way.
Definitely.
But I think a lot of people underestimate how important the testing phase is, and how quickly things can go unnoticed before it's too late.
Yeah, and I think a really good example of this was with the variable frame rate writing. So we recently added the ability to write out videos as a variable frame rate, which is really important for our users. It was requested for a long time. Once I started testing it, and this was something that was missed sort of by the developers, by the level 1 testing, and also by us not being able to preempt it, is that the rest of the framework of the software wasn't yet ready to understand variable frame rates. And so we had to actually then start testing all the other aspects of the software and changing simple things like range select to make sure it understood that now it was looking at variable frame rates. So that was a really good example.
Yeah, I remember. And I think that's a very good point, because I remember when we were going through that stage, and the idea of how that variable frame rate may affect something like frame selection didn't even occur to me. And I guess that's what level 2 testing is, right? So establishing how that feature can now affect the workflow of a user, right?
Exactly, yeah. I normally break down the testing so that I'm looking first at the feature in an isolated aspect, and then I look at it as a workflow, and then I look at it as if it's a chimpanzee doing some really random stuff, and if it's going to break the software in any way or not. And I think that's actually a crucial part, because you can easily use something incorrectly, and what we don't want to happen is that to crash the software or freeze people out of their project. So even though it seems a bit of a random test to do, it is actually quite important.
And I find this very fascinating, because I would say that we do almost the opposite thing. I mean, I'm not a tester at all. I don't do any testing, basically. And I realized that in my day-to-day job, doing tech support and training, what I do is mostly reacting to problems that are found usually by users in tech support, or trying to make things work when I do training. While actually you do the opposite, right?
Yes.
You try to break things. And I think it requires quite a bit of creativity, I would say. You need to get very creative and find new ways to break stuff. And also, that's kind of a question for you. Doing that kind of stuff, you also deal quite a lot with the user interface. So there is a little bit of also UX design in the work you do, right? Yeah. Which is something I don't do at all.
Yeah, I would definitely say most of the GUI updates that our users may have seen recently is down to our colleague Simone, who's very brilliant at looking at the software in a different way and updating it. So he definitely deserves the credit there, not me. But the way I have influenced changes is more just ensuring that the data is accurately represented.
Yeah.
That's where you've got things like the file information that can vary as we're adjusting the chain of the filters. And it's just continuous make sure that's always accurate for our users and keeping that forensic soundness.
Sure. Andrea, I wanted to ask you, because obviously you are on the support side. Of course, when a user first request a feature in support, and then of course we then start this process that we've just been talking about. I guess, is it down to you and your team to make sure that our user is updated on the progress? And how do you monitor this stage? Because I think we got so many users, and it may be difficult to keep track of all the requests.
Boy, where do I start? So, we do track everything, yes. So our users do normally have an account in our tech support portal, so we know who they are. When they reach out, we create a support ticket for that specific request, whatever it may be. We categorize it. We have several categories, like I mentioned bugs, I mentioned feature requests, general questions, issues not strictly related to the products, for example, with the support portal itself. And then the support colleague evaluates the issue, does a bit of testing if necessary, tries to replicate the issue. That's the main part, replicating what the user is actually experiencing. And that might be very easy or might take days. And then we provide that information to other departments, mostly developers, after, as you mentioned the hybrids meeting, after we have discussed it at the hybrids meeting.
Sure.
When we have updates, we ourselves are updated by our devs, and then we get back to the user. And the update might be just a heads up regarding the status of the support request, or it might be the final update. Like, we have decided to implement this feature. It has been implemented in a beta. It will likely come out in one of the following officials. Or it could be we have decided not to implement this feature.
That's great. Sorry, I was going to just...
Yeah, no, I just, because Andrea mentioned beta, I think this would be a good opportunity maybe to explain to our users what exactly is an alpha stage or a beta stage. And also at AMP Software, we have a release candidate stage, right, where we hopefully almost ready to release, although sometimes, of course, we notice problems. I don't know, maybe Sam, you would be a good person to explain how this works.
Sure. So within the software development, we have different branches of the software throughout that development stage. So once we've gathered the ideas of what we want to put into the software for the next release, the developers then will start developing those in the alpha branch. So let's say for 5, typically we may have 60 new tickets going into it, which will be a variation of features and, unfortunately, bugs, like any software company.
They're inevitable, right?
Yes. And so, but we keep on top of them. That's the important thing. And so those will then start getting fixed in the alpha branch. And the reason why we do it in a separate branch is because we don't want to contaminate the other parts of the software development with things that are experimental or developmental.
Sure. And therefore, am I right to assume that we do not share alpha builds with our customers?
Exactly,
right.
Yeah. And then after that, once we've finalized what's going to eventually be released in the next update, it will get transferred to the beta branch. And here we're just, again, going into that testing stage now. So this is where it's going to get passed to our level 1 testers, and then eventually to the level 2 testers. Once that testing stage is done and we're like, okay, it's good to go, we start to create the release candidate, which is the final sort of moments before we release that product update to our users.
And do I understand correctly that when we have a release candidate, developers can still continue to work on the alpha and beta builds in parallel with a release candidate for future versions of 5? They can be separated, the branches.
Exactly.
Right.
So because we do release quite a lot of updates per year for our users, we will have some developers working on features that might not be coming out for the next 12 months.
Sure.
So they're going to continue to develop that in a separate branch, while the most recent updates are getting put into the one.
Understood. And I wanted to ask you, you're probably the first, if not one of the first persons to do a proper level 2 testing of a feature. Do you ever find in a position where, you're thinking this is going to be a relatively easy feature to test? It's not a big feature. Hopefully, I'm going to be able to do it in a day or a couple of days. Do you find then that at some stage in that period you're thinking, maybe I underestimated this and there's more problems than what I thought?
Every time.
And how do you tackle that?
That's, I think, almost every time there's a new feature, I probably underestimate the effort it will take to test it, because it's hard to initially understand how it's going to interact with the rest of the software. And until you sort of get your hands onto the product, that's the only time you can start connecting the dots of, okay, this could potentially affect this, this, and this.
Yeah.
And I think the main thing is just to try keep a solid structure in the testing so that you're minimizing the chances of missing something during that stage.
And during this process, is there any ever a situation where you may be perceived to over worry about something, like, for example, if you checking for the forensic soundness, and then the developer might say or may think, this is not that much of a problem. How do you deal with different expectations between the testing team and the development team?
Yeah, I think there's always going to be a bit of a language barrier, as in from a forensic point of view to a development point of view.
Oh, okay. So not language as in people from different countries, but more like, right, okay.
Yeah. And I normally get to a point where if I've not found an issue with it for a good couple of days, that's when I'm going to start backing off.
Yeah.
But I will more than likely over-test everything.
Sure.
And I know I do. For good and for bad.
Yeah.
But I think it's something that's required, because I know as a user, I would hate to use a product that could then compromise me in court, for example.
Sure.
And it's not just like a software like Photoshop where you can get away with releasing a bug,
Yeah.
A bug for us could have real consequences to our users.
I agree, and I think that's we mentioned this before about that added duty to make sure that our features are forensically valid, and I think you need a person that perseveres and doesn't get frustrated and is extremely patient with the testing phase. Yeah. So I'm glad that we found one. But what I also would say, I remember when I was involved a little bit more in testing. I would say that, for example, AMP5 gives a lot of tools to be able to actually check that.
Yeah.
For example, I remember where we were testing the potential new usage of the GPU, the graphic processing unit, to write out our video. And I remember using the video mixer, which is a very versatile link filter, to actually compare pixel similarities between original videos and written out videos. And it's only by doing that throughout that stage that I realized, and then too it was a collective effort afterwards, that there was one specific setting that was causing an incredible difference between the original and the written out video. And of course, if I didn't use that tool in 5, then I wouldn't have never be able to notice that.
Yeah, and I think it's part of why 5 is so powerful, and something that a lot of users, especially maybe that used it a long time ago and have not touched it for a while, forget is that it's not just an enhancement piece of software.
Sure. Yeah,
it's got those analytical tools that users need to analyze video, but those same tools is what I use to test to make sure everything's working.
So 5 becomes your testing tool.
Yeah.
Oh, exactly. That's so interesting. Yeah, I find it incredible.
So because we've spoken about bugs, I think not only one of the areas where we get a lot of feature requests coming from, I think also when bugs do leak through, it comes from training as well.
Yeah.
So I'd love to talk a little bit about that part of what we do when, unfortunately, a bug does come out. And it's normally picked up by, I would say, training.
I would say so, either from support or training. From support, I've already explained the procedure pretty much. So a user reaches out and describes the bug, and we try to replicate it. When a bug comes out in training, that's of course a different context, a different situation. And as a trainer, I've been training for a few years now. As a trainer, when I was at the very beginning of my trainer journey, let's say, I was kind of embarrassed when a bug came up in training. Now, well, I wouldn't say I'm happy because I'm not, obviously, but it's kind of a physiological moment of teaching, I would say. And it's also a very useful moment for us because we've got 10 people over there using the software in ways that might be slightly different than the way I'm used to do. And so they are more likely to come up and find some bugs than we are, right? So whenever bugs come up during training, I make sure I share them with all the class. So all the class is aware that we found a bug. We take good notes, we jot down whatever the bug was, and then we, once again, we reach out internally, discuss it, try to fix it as soon as possible, and notify the user who actually found the bug.
Exactly.
So it's an interesting moment also for discussion.
Yeah, and I think a good point that we should address here is that when we do find a bug, externally or internally, after a product has been released, we very quickly assess the severity of that bug. And we have different categories for these. And I think the one that our users probably are most interested about is if forensicness is compromised.
Sure.
And in that situation, that is when we would do something called a maintenance release. For some bugs that aren't going to harm our users, we may let that pass over until the next product release. But anything that's severe, that could cause harm, we notify our users immediately.
Definitely.
And we fix that immediately, and we send out something called a maintenance release to get that bug out of the software. And I think that's an important part.
Definitely, because we know that those people, the trainees, the people we meet at events, the people who reach out through support, they might not be experts. They might have just been starting out with the software, but they do care about the forensic approach.
Yes,
because
exactly.
that's what I do. That's what I do on a daily basis. So that's the main thing for us. Yeah. So we do notify them, and a maintenance release is a way for us to reach out to users and let them know right away that they should update.
Yeah.
I wanted to... go on, Sam. You want to say something?
I was going to go to closing remarks, so if you want to...
Well, before we do that, I wanted to discuss a very hot topic, AI, and maybe give our users, a view on our stance on AI for feature requests, but also for things like using AI to actually code to help with development. And it's interesting because actually at the moment we are here in Trieste and for our annual meeting, and we were discussing about this very topic today internally. So we just wanted to give our users maybe a little bit of an overview on our stance. Now, we already, of course, released the assisted reduction in replay, which uses a learning model. But of course, we stress that yes, in this instance is a very valuable tool that can save a lot of time. But we always say to our users that users are ultimately responsible for checking the output of this filter, and that they have the tools to be able to do very easily manual correction. But what about other feature requests that might involve AI? What is your position on it?
Yeah,
and I'm asking both of you.
Sure.
I will go from the company's position first,
Sure.
which is, I think, a good standpoint. For example, for 5, we have no AI in 5, and we never will. I say never. The CEO may change his mind,
Sam.
but we don't do it in 5.
Sure. And
so,
for a good reason, right?
Yeah, and so if any feature requests come asking for AI in 5, at the moment we're going to say no.
Sure. And what about other things that might help, for example, with the investigating and triaging side of video? For example, AI tools that might help finding particular elements or type of persons in long video clips.
I would say that, of course, we know the official position of the company, but we're not against AI. We have applied in other tools like Authenticate some AI tools, and in those scenarios, we decided that they would have been useful tools to help the investigators make up their own minds.
Yeah.
So I think that's the whole point. We don't want to provide answers. We want to provide analysis tools. I'm talking at least about Authenticate, right? And then the users need to make up their own mind and use all the information provided by the tools also AI-based tools, and then decide if that type of information can lead them in one direction or another. We are open to anything, I would say. Just today we have discussed extensively about AI, possible applications of AI in our products, and I would say that given the peculiar industry we are working in, we should be very cautious, and that's what we do. We are being very cautious.
Yeah. Sure. And I think for me, you have to fight fire with fire, and you're going to be coming across a lot of AI in investigations. And the only way really to tackle that, especially as it becomes more sophisticated, is also to adopt AI to fight it. It's always going to be a cat and mouse game.
But I think Andrea made a very interesting point, and I totally agree that we may offer some AI tools to assist with certain aspect of the video forensic workflow. For example, authentication and detection of deepfakes. But we always say to our users, we say, yes, you have this tool and it can be helpful, but there are also many other tools that maybe use more traditional methods of authentication, like shadow analysis, geometrical analysis. Well, go and use them all. The more you use, the more robust your evidence is going to be. So that for whatever reason, if the AI filter makes an error, which we are honest, it can happen, right? Then you still have other methodologies that can assist with can contribute to the robustness of the evidence.
Definitely. An analogy I sometimes use when I train people in Authenticate is the blood work analogy. I don't know if I shared that already with you. When you do to a clinic, let's say, and do your blood work, when you have the results will not say you are in great shape. They will just provide a list of objective findings, right?
Yeah.
With actual units of measurements, and then you will have to go to a doctor, to a practitioner that will
evaluate
those.
That's right.
That person will have been trained in the profession, and that person will be able to actually understand what the results are, put all these little pieces of information together and draw a conclusion. And that's what we try to explain to users when they use Authenticate, but that's a more general approach. We are for
that analogy.
Yeah. We are.
It's great.
I will let you know how much I want. So we want users to be aware of the tools they're using, regardless of the fact that they are AI based or not. They should gather from each tool the results that the tool provides within its limitations, and then draw their own conclusion. That's our stance, I would say. Sure. I don't know if you agree.
That's great.
Perfect.
Thanks for sharing, guys.
So I wanted to finalize this with just saying that we are, I think, as a company, extremely grateful to have the user base that we do. You guys do drive the development of the software and help to improve it. And I think it's something that I hope our users are aware of, that they have that influence with us and that relationship with us, and that we do appreciate it, and it does make the company a better place.
Yeah,
Definitely.
I totally agree. I mean, we wouldn't really be in this position if it wasn't for our users. And like I said at the beginning, we are extremely fortunate that we have a direct line of communication with our users. We have a great relationship, and long may this continue.
Well, on my side, I would say that I always consider myself kind of not a people person. I have to say that since I started working from App, that's kind of changed. I changed my mind a little bit, because the experience of being able to interact with you guys, with users and people who actually use our products in support and training, has been extremely enriching. So most of the stuff I learned, I would say I learned from users, actually, not from colleagues. From colleagues, with the exception of Amy, of course. No, joking, of course, I learned a ton from Amy, but mostly from users. And once again, I would say beginner users and experienced users, they can all teach you something.
For sure.
Perfect. Thank you guys for joining me.
Thanks.
I want to say thank you to the users to watching, and I hope you enjoy the rest of the podcast series. Okay, thank you for joining us for this episode. I just wanted to say, make sure to subscribe to our YouTube channel, and make sure to check out the other podcast episodes on our Spotify.
And also remember that you can subscribe to future episodes of this series. Of course, don't forget our blog. You get a lot of valuable information, especially about software updates. So make sure you go on to that.
And we also have a Discord channel you can join. There is a very vibrant community of users that help each other with cases and with questions and with ideas in general. Sometimes we chip in, but mostly the community is self-sufficient. I don't know if that's the correct expression in English. So it's a very good place to learn from other people.
And also, if you would like to receive news automatically, just sign up to our newsletter. It's on our main website, and you can find all the information through that.
Great. Thank you, Emmy. Thank you, Frizz. And until next time, take care.
Thank you, guys.
Bye.
See you next time.